The Phantom Punch, Sonny Liston versus Muhammad Ali, 1965. On May 25, 1965, Lewiston, Maine, a tiny arena packed with over 2,500 fans witnessed a fight that would go down as one of boxing's most suspicious nights. Muhammad Ali, still arrogant and newly crowned champion, faced Sonny Liston in a rematch. But what should have been a brutal war ended in just over a minute, with a punch that many claim never even landed. Liston went down from Ali's quick right hand, a blow that looked more like a tap than a knockout shot. Ali screamed at him to get up, while the crowd erupted in confusion. Was it a clean knockdown, or did something far darker happen? Whispers spread instantly, believing Liston was pressured by outside forces. Some claimed Liston had mob connections. Some said he'd been forced to take a dive, fearing debts or threats to his life, while others believed he wanted out of the fight after being humiliated by Ali's taunts. What's certain is that even the referee looked lost, unsure when or whether to stop the fight. The Phantom Punch was replayed endlessly, but no clear answer ever emerged. Officially, Ali won by first-round knockout. Unofficially, the stain never left. It wasn't just a fight. It was a scandal that convinced fans boxing could be rigged right before their eyes. If the Phantom Punch made fans suspect invisible hands, the next scandal showed what happens when nobody stops the hands we can all see. The death of Duke Koo Kim, 1982. On November 13, 1982, the bright lights of Caesars Palace in Las Vegas set the stage for a brutal lightweight title fight between Ray Mancini and South Korea's Duke Koo Kim. What unfolded that night became one of the darkest chapters in boxing history. The two men waged war for 14 grueling rounds. Kim was relentless, pressing forward even as Mancini's punches piled up. But in the 14th, Mancini landed a crushing right that finally dropped Kim to the canvas. He rose to his feet, but his legs betrayed him. A few moments later, Kim collapsed and was immediately rushed to the hospital, but he never regained consciousness. He slipped into a coma and died 4 days later from brain hemorrhage. The tragedy sent shockwaves far beyond the ring. 4 months after his passing, Kim's mother committed suicide, and almost a year later, still haunted by guilt over Kim's death, Richard Green, the referee who officiated the fight, also took his own life. Boxing had to face the blood on its gloves, and the sport immediately shortened championship bouts from 15 rounds to 12, a change meant to protect fighters. But for many, it was a little too late. What made this scandal unbearable wasn't just Kim's death, but how promoters and networks leaned into the spectacle, cashing in on the tragedy. It revealed the darkest truth of all. In boxing, human lives can be lost, but the business always keeps moving. Don King, the shadow over heavyweight boxing. Before he became the sport's biggest showman, Don King was a Cleveland numbers boss with a rap sheet. In 1967, he beat a man named Sam Garrett to death over a $600 debt and later served time for manslaughter. Years earlier, a separate shooting was ruled justifiable. And when he walked out of prison, he didn't fade, he took over. Within a decade, he grew into the legendary boxing promoter, staging Ali Foreman in Zaire, Ali Frazier III in Manila, then stacking heavyweight titles like poker chips. Fighters accused King of coercive contracts and phantom fees, of steering them to his handpicked advisors, and then skimming the proceeds. Muhammad Ali sued. Larry Holmes blasted the percentages. Tim Witherspoon said he was strong-armed into deals that bled his purses. Even Mike Tyson filed a $100 million suit and settled for millions. Federal prosecutors once tried King for insurance fraud. He was acquitted, but the lawsuits never stopped, and the whispers about underworld ties never died. It was a scandal because the outcomes of his promotions weren't only decided in the ring, they were shaped in boardrooms, hotel suites, and back-channel meetings. The effect on boxing was lasting. A promoter-centric system, hidden money flows, and fans convinced that business, not merit, picked winners. If power contracts can warp a career from the outside, imagine what happens when a trainer reaches inside the gloves themselves. Panama Lewis and the night the gloves lied. On June 16, 1983, Madison Square Garden, a soft-spoken 21-year-old prospect named Billy Collins Jr. steps into the ring undefeated to face Luis Resto, who was trained by the electric, notorious Panama Lewis. 10 rounds later, Collins' face looks like it went through a windshield. His face began to swell abnormally fast, eyes closing, skin tearing under punches. Then they knew something was wrong. After the fight, Collins' father, who worked his corner, reaches for Resto's glove during the post-fight handshake and freezes. They were soft, too soft. Turns out the padding had been illegally removed and soaked the wraps in plaster of Paris by Resto's trainer, Panama Lewis. The result was a beating so brutal that Collins lost his eyesight and his career in one night. Less than a year later, he faced mental struggles and died months later in a car crash many believe was suicide. The fallout led to a criminal investigation, as Resto later admitted to knowing the gloves were altered. But boxing never forgave him. Both Resto and Lewis were not only banned from boxing for life, they also served prison time. After this, boxing overhauled glove inspection rules. Commissions introduced tamper-evident tape, required multiple officials to sign off on hand wrapping and gloving, and even began filming locker room prep for title fights because trust had been broken at the wrist. If a glove can be turned into a weapon, imagine the power of something more subtle: the clock. The night account felt longer than 10, and the world's baddest man took his first fall. The long count and the night Tyson fell. February 11th, 1990. Tokyo Dome. Mike Tyson, the undefeated destroyer, walks in a 42-1 favorite. Across from him, James Buster Douglas, grieving his mother, dismissed by oddsmakers, comes to fight like a man with nothing left to lose. For 8 rounds, Douglas stuns the world with a jab that keeps Tyson blinking and a rhythm that keeps him guessing. Then, late in the 8th, Tyson detonates a right uppercut and Douglas finally crashes to the canvas. Here's where the darkness creeps in. The referee's count becomes the story. Was it slow? Did he start late? Ringside replays show the timekeeper and the ref out of sync as Douglas beats the count at 9. Wobbly but alive. 2 rounds later, Douglas storms back, buries Tyson under a flurry, and flooring Iron Mike for the first and last knockout loss of his prime. What happened after the bell was a scandal of business, not violence. Team Tyson and promoter Don King protested, arguing Douglas should have been counted out in the 8th. Sanctioning bodies hesitated, TV executives waited, and for days the most miraculous upset felt like it might be erased in a boardroom. Eventually, Douglas was recognized as champion, but one message lingered. In boxing, even a perfect punch might need the perfect politics. If Tokyo proved a countdown can bend perception, the next fight showed how 2 seconds can wreck a lifetime. If you're enjoying this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. I've got plenty more coming your way. 2 seconds to ruin. March 17th, 1990, Las Vegas. Thunder meets lightning. Julio Cesar Chavez, the relentless pressure god, stalks Meldrick Taylor, the Olympic gold medalist. For 11 rounds, they carve a masterpiece at full speed. Taylor piling up rounds with combinations and Chavez banking damage with every thudding counter to the ribs and jaw. By the 12th round, Taylor's face becomes a mask. Cheekbone swelling, eye closing, blood and bravery in equal measure. Still, he's ahead on the cards and needs only the bell. Then the last minute turns cruel. Chavez lands a right hand that folds Taylor into the corner. He rises at 6. Referee Richard Steele asks, "Are you okay?" Taylor's eyes drift toward his corner, searching for Lou Duva, and he doesn't answer. There are 2 seconds left. Steele waves it off. Technical knockout for Chavez. Taylor would have won a decision. Instead, he leaves on a stretcher. Steele later explained he knew Taylor was winning, but saw a fighter who wasn't answering back to the most important question in the sport. Are you okay to continue? He chose the man over the clock. However, the controversy never left, and neither did the lesson. It became one of boxing's biggest scandals as it condensed the sport's impossible calculus into a heartbeat. Fighter safety versus the fighter's right to finish. Promoters, networks, and sanctioning bodies all insisted the referee did his job. Yet millions saw a champion denied by a stopwatch. The aftermath scarred Taylor's career and ignited a decades-long argument about discretion, timekeeping, and who a referee is protecting, the athlete or the industry. If 2 seconds could flip a title, imagine what 30 minutes of crooked scorecards can do on the world's biggest stage. Olympic boxing's dirty secret. The Olympics promise purity, the ring keeps time, the bell keeps order, and the judges keep it honest until they don't. In Seoul, 1988, Roy Jones Jr. put on a masterclass against hometown hero Park Sae-hun, snapping jabs and slicing combinations. Even the commentator perceived something was fishy. When the decision came, it sounded like a misprint. Parked by split decision, and the entire arena was in shock. Jones received the Val Barker Trophy as the game's best boxer, a consolation prize that felt like an admission the scorecards had lied. Rumors of political pressure and backroom influence turned a gold medal moment into a global embarrassment. Fast forward to Rio, 2016, different continent, same stain. Michael Conlan completely outboxed Vladimir Nikitin. However, when it was time to crown the winner, Conlan raised his hands in victory and then watched 3 judges hand his opponent the nod. He flipped the double bird at the jury. Raw, furious, unforgettable. Within days, the governing body pulled a slate of referees and judges from the tournament and promised reforms. The message was clear. The system was sick, and everyone finally saw the symptoms on live TV. Olympic medals are supposed to be clean currency, but when scorecards look bought, entire careers get stolen in 3 signatures. The effect on boxing was seismic. Scoring overhauls, independent panels, perpetual reform, yet the same old doubt lingering ringside. It was too dark for the headlines because the Olympics sell dreams, not memos about governance and influence. If judges could tilt a medal and stars could tilt the law, the next story is the night the world's most famous heavyweight walked into a courtroom and never shook off the verdict. Mike Tyson's rape conviction. July 1991, Indianapolis. Mike Tyson was a global phenomenon, the youngest heavyweight champion in history when he met 18-year-old Desiree Washington during a rehearsal for the Miss Black America pageant. The celebrity athlete called her late one night asking her to tour the city in his limo, and she eagerly agreed. But what she thought was a romantic date soon turned into a nightmare. When Washington returned to Tyson's room at Canterbury Hotel, the boxer propositioned her for sex and sexually assaulted her when she turned down his advances. Tyson was indicted in September 1991, and the resulting media frenzy sparked heated debate surrounding date rape. Tyson maintained that the sex had been consensual, and many people believed him. Then, in February 1992, Tyson was found guilty of rape and sentenced to 10 years in prison with 4 years suspended. He ultimately served just 3 years behind bars. The most fearsome heavyweight of his era swaps bright lights for bars, insisting it was consensual as the verdict cements a permanent fracture in his legacy. While the boxer was able to continue his career and even briefly reclaim his title as heavyweight champion upon his release in March 1995, Desiree Washington's life was left in shambles. She became depressed and withdrawn, all while her attacker continued his life as usual. For boxing, the fallout was existential. Sponsors vanished. Promoters recalculated the risk of building empires on unpredictable stars. Tyson's eventual release and return to the ring couldn't unring the bell. Every comeback bout carried the echo of the courtroom, the roar of the crowd layered over an unresolved moral ledger. Fans argued about redemption while critics argued about tolerance for violence outside the ropes when a man's fists make money inside them. If a courtroom could shake the sport's soul, the next scandal struck at its knuckles, and the sport had to find a way to adjust the rules. The Margarito loaded wraps scandal? January 24, 2009. Staples Center, Los Angeles. Margarito showed up looking calm for his title defense against Shane Mosley, maybe too calm. Moments before the fight, Shane Mosley's new trainer, Nazim Richardson, watches Antonio Margarito get taped and stops everything, requesting a rewrap of Margarito's hands. California inspectors step in and peel back a gauze pad crusted with a chalky substance. They found hardened inserts, cast-like pads hidden under his wraps that hardened as it dries. In other words, they made his fists hard as bricks. Despite the illegal wraps being confiscated, Margarito was forced to rewrap his hands legally. The fight still went ahead the same night, and Mosley dismantled Margarito, stopping the granite-chinned Tijuana Tornado in the 9th round with a TKO victory. At the end of the night, the California State Athletic Commission didn't take it lightly. Margarito's license was revoked for a year. His trainer, Javier Capetillo, received a lifetime ban. Capetillo claimed there was a mix-up with the pads, and Margarito denied he knew anything about it. However, the sport didn't buy the innocence. The entire scandal forced boxing to adopt stricter pre-fight inspection protocols to ensure nothing like Margarito's case ever happens again. Fighters now have less privacy in the dressing room than ever before, all thanks to one rap job gone horribly wrong. Boxing had its scandal of the decade, cementing Margarito's legacy in all the wrong ways. Despite all the buzz, a dark question spreads backward in time. What about Margarito's brutal 2008 beating of Miguel Cotto? Cotto's face was destroyed that night. Although there's no proof, the stench never fades. However, the rematch years later tells a different story with Miguel Cotto dismantling Margarito to claim the win. Though Margarito returned to the ring eventually, his reputation never recovered, cementing his name with one of the most infamous cheating scandals in boxing history. That was danger hidden in cotton and tape. However, the next scandal wasn't hidden at all. It was gunfire on an Atlanta night, and a champion who never made it home. The murder of Vernon Forrest, 2009. Vernon Forrest represented the U.S. at the Olympics in 1992. After the Games, he turned professional fighter and became a four-time world champion and mentor to kids in his community. However, on July 25th, he pulled into an Atlanta gas station with his godson. A man stepped up with a gun, ripped away his keys and watch, and bolted. The fighter's instinct answered before caution did, and Forrest chased him. He turned a corner, met a second man, and the night broke open. Gunfire cracked the air, and Forrest was hit multiple times. He collapsed on the pavement, and the champion who outboxed Shane Mosley twice, who spent his off nights raising money for children with developmental disabilities, didn't make it home. Officers revealed 8 .40 caliber shell casings were found near his body. Entry wounds showed that he had his back turned to the shooter. The boxing world fell quiet, and detectives pieced the night together, traced a robbery crew, and the names came out in court. Investigators identified one of the suspected robbers as 20-year-old Demario Ware, who'd had previous scrapes with the law. And police spoke with Mare's grandmother, who also confirmed his involvement in the crime. Ware confessed that he and 2 men were at the gas station on their way to a club when they saw the Jaguar pull in and decided to put a robbery plan into action. 3 weeks later, the other accomplices were identified as Sharman Sinkfield and Jaquante Cruz. They individually went to trial, and in 2011, they were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Forrest wasn't just a belt holder. He was the man who spent his prime building programs for special needs kids, the calm presence in a sport that rarely knows calm. The killing wasn't cinematic or mysterious, it was senseless. And fighters who once circled him under bright lights gathered under church lights to say goodbye. Maxim Dadashev's Last Walk, 2019. On July 19, 2019, at the MGM National Harbor in Oxon Hill, Maryland, the quiet and undefeated Russian junior welterweight Maxim Dadashev walked into the ring to face the heavy-handed and relentless fighter Subriel Matias in an IBF eliminator. 12 grueling rounds that rewarded pressure and punished hesitation. It was a fierce contest, but something felt off. Matias kept coming, heavy and constant, and Dadashev met him in tight exchanges that shaved hours off a life in minutes. By round 11, Dadashev was absorbing too much damage. His trainer, Buddy McGirt, had seen enough, and after much hesitation, he finally threw in the towel. By then, it was already too late. Dadashev tried to walk it off, but he collapsed on his way to the locker room. He was taken to the University of Maryland Prince George's Hospital Center, where he underwent emergency brain surgery. 4 days later, on July 23rd, he died from swelling of the brain at the age of 28, leaving behind a wife, a son, and a gym full of friends. The statistics never mattered after that. What remained was a corner that did the right thing, and a sport took too much. Dadashev wasn't reckless, and he wasn't unprepared. He was a good fighter on a bad night, and the cost was everything. These are the chapters boxing tries to bury. Hit the like button if you made it this far, and drop a comment with your pick for which scandal hit hardest or what we missed. And don't forget to subscribe for more cinematic deep dives into boxing shadow history. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.